Thank you for being with me. Top line reaction to this budget. JPM put out a note that said most of the fiscal squeeze, and Claire was alluding to this, most of the fiscal squeeze happens too late to help the B of E control inflation over its 2-year horizon.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think what the government has done is it's postponed a large amount of the fiscal consolidation into the later part of the forecast period, which and actually provided near-term support to the economy, which from an economic perspective is probably the right thing to do because it does reduce the severity of recession by providing help to the vulnerable households who require help with energy bills. But at the same time, I think it does make the Bank of England's job a little bit harder. Given the fact that most of the consolidation is much later, and in the horizon that the Bank of England forecasts inflation in, fiscal policy is still slightly supportive, and as a result, you end up having the Bank of England to hike rates more in order to bring inflation under control.
Do you think this windfall tax on energy companies, the UK says that it expects to earn $65 billion. There have been similar calls here in the United States, although economists, at least here, disagree about whether the net benefit of that would be positive for the economy. Where do you stand on that issue?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult to say, firstly, how much the windfall taxes would raise, and also I think what the impact of windfall taxes would be on investment in other parts of the economy. So I think the jury's still, going to be out on that. But I think what's interesting is that, in terms of the macroeconomic impact, the taxes on energy companies is, I think, unlikely to have a very big macroeconomic impact because it's something that's, quite difficult to measure, unlike taking away taxes from or raising taxes for people and households who are going to potentially spend that money into the economy. I think windfall taxes generally have a more limited macroeconomic impact.
Interesting. It's been interesting to see the central banks sort of move in lockstep between the Bank of England, the Federal Reserve, the ECB. This idea with this budget of cutting taxes, or excuse me, raising taxes and cutting spending. I mean, do you think that the UK is sort of the first but not the last? In other words, might we start to see that in other nations, maybe like the US? I mean, what do you think about that?
I mean, I think the UK had a specific problem, because of which some of these measures had to be taken maybe in a more extreme manner than what is necessary. I think after the sort of mini budget got announced, the UK assets lost a lot of credibility, and today was a step that the government had to take in order to regain fiscal credibility and in order to make sure that their books are balanced in the medium term. So I think the pressure was probably more acute in the UK. But I think in other countries, the concept sort of applies that, most countries are facing high inflation, which are, much higher than target. And central banks are obviously trying to do their best in order to curtail that inflation. But I think fiscal policy also has a role to play in order to make sure that it doesn't make the problems worse, while at the same time supporting the vulnerable through the energy crisis as well.
And so just to button that up a bit, so do you think that this actually did restore some credibility and did provide some stability to the markets?
I mean, I think, as we just heard, I think I agree with what was just said, that, fiscal credibility was already restored by reversing a large part of the unfunded tax cuts that were announced in the mini budget. I think today, the market's reaction was fairly calm. So it wasn't, anything like what was, what the reaction was when the mini budget was announced. So in some way, we could say, they ended up announcing a budget which markets are okay with, and they didn't react they didn't react negatively to it. There was a small drop in sterling and a bit of rise in gilt yields, but nothing like what was seen after the mini budget. So I think it could be said. I mean, maybe I'm saying it too early, but it could be said that maybe the calm is restored, and in some sense, going forward now, the focus of UK assets would now be on the macroeconomic outlook as well as the Bank of England's outlook, rather than focusing too much on the fiscal side.
And how it actually plays out in the real economy. It'll be one to watch for
exactly.
sure. Sonali Punhani is the chief UK economist at Credit Suisse. Thank you for being with us today.